Disclaimer, this is more of a rant than anything else. I tried to make this argument flow, but I want my points to get out first since I want to flesh out why I don't like the show in question. So if it sounds like I'm jumping abruptly to another point, then this is why. I want to get this video out before the show in question gets to its next season, which might be episode 26 if the writers want to organize their seasons like Arc 5. As of this video's release, we're at episode 19 of the anime, and I've watched up to episode 18. This might be an unpopular opinion, especially this early into a show's run. At first, I didn't want to say anything because I thought I was the only one who felt this way. At first, I thought some of my bitterness from Arc 5's ending spilled over to Vrains, so I held my tongue until I started liking it. I still don't like it. I admit I had some biases and preconceptions. News had first stated that Yusaku would be someone who wasn't into dueling, and that the season would circle around the theme of trying things out. Looking back, I wonder if the theme was actually the writers telling the audience that despite Arc 5's ending and the apparent signs of Vrains sliding down the slippery slope, just try it out and see if you guys like it. A hopeful interpretation, I know. Now, Yusaku's an emotionless and mysterious pro-duelist by the name of Playmaker, whose avatar design is a million times better than his normal everyday design, who's fueled by revenge and hatred towards the Knights of Hanoi. When Konami first revealed the main players of Vrains, barring Aoi and Akira, none of the characters remotely stood out to me as interesting. And even then, I considered Aoi and Akira to be interesting because we never had a brother-sister dynamic in Yu-Gi-Oh! Besides Leo and Luna in 5Ds. Emma's hair and deck are the only things I like about her. She's basically the sexy hacker who thinks she can get away with things because of her hubris. Kusanagi is blander than bread. Ai is a little too try-hard in his sassiness, and his dialogue is comparable to episode 1's exposition dialogue. I can see Naoki to be so utterly useless, he makes Bronk look like a main character. And what's with Go Onizuka's design? He's the most disappointing character so far because 1, he has circuit hair but cutesy eyes. Why did they give him staticky eyes that look robotic? That would have been a lot cooler. 2, it felt like we began and finished his arc in a span of 2 episodes. Is this guy one of the main characters or is he a side character? I don't see this guy being important unless the writers decide to shoehorn him later to make him relevant. As a matter of fact, Aoi also feels like a side character. Say what you want about her traumatic breakdown because of the Hanoi card, but the impact of the scene was ruined by the fact that it happened way too early in the series and that the writers had the audacity to think that Aoi deserves our deepest pity just cause of all of that. Like, I don't even know her like that, but you expect me to cry over someone who isn't a main character? Honestly, Aoi fares better than Go in that her brother is important, so she could possibly pop up later on. There's a possibility that she won't suffer the same fate as her female predecessors, but I honestly forgot about that because I don't see her fulfilling that role in the first place, setting Aoi even farther back. And the worst thing about this is that Yusaku is pretty much all alone until he gets his posse, which will probably consist of Kusanagi, the friend, and Revolver, the rival, if my prediction of this series comes true, but I'll talk about that later. Because the thing is, Yusaku is basically like Yusei, which further supports Vrains being 5D's 2.0, in the sense that his character is flat. And there's nothing wrong with a flat character, though flat main characters are extremely rare unless it's a short story or something, because people expect the protagonist to grow and change in response to the story events and turning points. I haven't watched 5Ds in its entirety, but I'd hazard an educated guess and say that Yusei doesn't exactly change throughout the story, but instead use his experience to reinforce his pre-existing beliefs. Yeah, he has suffered, but suffering doesn't automatically lead to change, and it could be said that suffering only helped to harden preconceived beliefs. Yusei's beliefs just happen to be altruistic and saintly. Yusaku, while he does have good intentions, it's fueled by negative energy. Kinda like the road to hell is paved with good intentions sort of thing. And you know what? That would be so interesting. Yusaku, in his quest for revenge, acts out in a way that ends up hurting other people, and his path of destruction only causes others to fear and resent him despite all he has been through. But that's just one possibility that came to my head. Sadly, with the way the show is going, I won't hold my breath. In addition to all that, the difference between Yusei and Yusaku is not just their flat personalities, but the people around them. Yusei had his own posse of friends that shared his interests in junk technology and dueling. They each had their own strengths and weakness, and they all played off of that, making Yusei come off as a reliable friend, which is why Yusei felt guilt after he dueled Callan the first time. Callan accused him of being a backstabber, which exasperated Yusei's pre-existing guilt concerning Reverse Zero. Yusaku, on the other hand, only has Kusanagi, who's just as vapid as he. There's nothing to play off of. It's more accurate to say that Yusaku is a better Kusanagi. The only thing Kusanagi's good for is being the second Yusaku that can work on the outside and help Yusaku 1 out of jams he wouldn't be able to on the inside. If Yusaku had found a way to clone himself and didn't have an obligation towards Kusanagi, he wouldn't be working with him. But hey, that's just me. So let's go over the actual content of the show and point out things that made me really doubt the show's quality right off the bat. To be honest, I had a bad feeling about Vrains since episode 1. The most annoying thing about this episode that I alluded to before was that 97% of the dialogue was pure exposition. I don't remember if every first episode had this problem, except Zexal, because I actually watched the first episode several times in both English and Japanese. But whether or not this was the case, it doesn't excuse doing it again. It's so cringy and unnatural, like I'm watching mannequins talk to each other, and they talk as if it's the first time ever discussing a subject. Like the new Dual Disc, they spend so much time talking about how it's the latest one from SOL Technologies, but it's evident that everyone else but Yusaku has it already, since Yusaku's the only one who still uses real cards. So what's the point of the conversation? Using Zexal again as an example, the writers didn't have to explain the AR system. All they had to do was show it, and we can figure it out ourselves. I'm not saying Zexal's better or anything. I'm simply using an earlier example of good writing techniques as a means to show that they could have done the same thing, but instead they didn't. And Shin Yoshida worked on all Yu-Gi-Oh seasons, so what gives? But it wasn't just that conversation. Akira's conversation with the regents from Ergo Proxy is also full of expositional dialogue that they themselves would already know. But let's all dump this on the audience instead of letting them watch what's happening and piece the information ourselves. This also applied to the conversation between Yusaku and Kusanagi, since Kusanagi had plenty of time to tell Yusaku about Data Storm and whatnot way before the events of the show. It comes off as aggravating because if they truly didn't know before the events of the show, how did they manage to combat the Knights of Hanoi without the Knights and SOL tracking those two amateurs down and eliminating them? And speaking of Yusaku, he's the most boring character of them all. Let's compare him to Yusei once again. And again, let me say that I haven't seen all the 5Ds, so if my analysis is off, let me know. But I think I've seen and heard enough about 5Ds to make a decent comparison. First of all, I don't think Yusei had a boring or bad duel, and if he did, it was probably once or twice or maybe 3 times throughout the entire series. Yusaku's duels have been nothing but boring until he fought against Revolver and Emma. Before those two, the animations were reused time and time again. Link's summoning sequence was too long and aesthetically boring compared to the previous summoning methods. No doubt it has improved a lot after episode 14, but it's still inferior. The tension within duels are artificial. I mean, yeah, we all know the protagonists tend to win all, if not most of their duels, at least the ones that matter. But usually their method of winning is the icing on the cake. This is exemplified with Yuya's duels. Since he's an entertainment duelist, he had many unconventional ways of winning that made many of his duels fresh and exciting. Yusaku's dueling, on the other hand, is as stale as his personality, and the environment during duels has been the same row of buildings flying past them, which was thankfully fixed in Yusaku's duel against Emma. And now let's talk briefly about Yusaku's quirk. No, this is not Boku no Hero Academia. I mean Yusaku's 3-point list thing he tends to do. Like, did Yoshida think this little thing was endearing enough to give to any character, much less the main character? Did he not think that this was going to be annoying as hell? And I bring up the quirk because I know people are going to say, but Mora, is connected to Yusaku's past, so it's important. But I think it was the other way around. That they came up with the quirk first and then tried to make it a backstory thing in order to justify its existence. That's the feeling I got anyway, so feel free to disagree. And finally, the pacing of the show. They're moving way too fast, signified by Aoi's traumatic event, and the audacity of the writers to have episode 13 to be a recap episode. This, plus the fact that each episode feel like mission objectives, makes the entire show feel so impersonal and lackluster. I can't relate or root for anyone. I don't know them, and they come off as one-dimensional, or two-dimensional at best. For characters like Akira, Aoi, and Go, I feel as though they have a backstory for the sake of having a backstory, as if that's all it takes to draw me into their character, while present versions of said character end up being underwhelming. As for episode 13, well, they changed directors from then on, and I don't know if I should laugh or cry. In fact, this episode helped confirm and solidify my opinions of Vrains. I think the writers are going to end up condensing this current plot of Yusaku finding his past and Kusanagi's brother in order to do something else later on, or split it so that Yusaku fulfills one of those objectives and work on the next one somewhere down the line. Basically, it's gonna be like going back to DM, GX, and 5D style, when the main characters fight the bad guy of the season for each season until the writers move on to a new arc. All in all, I don't know what to expect, but I know that I'm not interested. I'm still gonna try to keep up with the show here and there, just so I don't have to binge it later. So anyways, that's my opinion of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. I'm not claiming I'm right and everyone else is delusional. I just don't like wasting my time. If you like my video, you can like it and share it on social media. And if you're interested in my content, you can subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Oh, another thing. I guess I should mention episode 18, since I kind of watched it after I made the script for this video, and you know, I've seen it and I feel like it doesn't exactly change my opinion, with Yusaku getting angry at Akira for trying to help and, you know, trying to reach out to him. I feel like it's a tiny bit unjustified. Not unjustified on Yusaku's part, but unjustified on the writer's part. I can understand with Yusaku because Akira is trying to take this whole matter into his own hands and telling Yusaku to just sit back when, you know, it's impossible for Yusaku to sit back and do nothing, you know, especially considering that he's personally impacted by whatever happened to him in his past. But again, this is another instance of the writers expecting me to care about Yusaku when we haven't really seen anything about his past. I mean, we see, you know, little Yusaku sit in a white room, like that's just basically 4 walls and nothing else, and I guess that hints towards like some kind of experimentation or isolation or something like that. But I mean, there was other shows that did that and probably did it better. I know, you know, Vrains is doing the same thing, but since I've seen it several times, you gotta make it stand out to me. Like, you just telling me that you are exactly like any other anime. Even at that point, I still don't care. And I end up kinda, just a little bit, rooting for Akira more, in the sense that at least he was trying to help. And Yusaku's and Kusanagi's we can do it all by ourselves like mentality just comes off a little childish. Or it's probably just me because I've been through that phase a little bit and I've grown out of that. So it's just, you know, it's just a little like the scene kind of had an opposite effect on me. Like, I end up getting mad at Yusaku and Kusanagi just a little bit for getting mad, but not because of why they're mad, but because of what the writers think they're trying to do, making me care for these characters when I felt nothing about them like 17 episodes before. So, you know, and I think it's way too long to make me care for a character. Like, I don't want to keep comparing things to Zexo, but the thing is, I really like Zexo. I can understand in the, like, people wrote off Yuma from the very beginning, and I guess that is a little bit unfair, especially considering that people right off the bat like Vrains for absolutely no reason, and I gave Vrains more of a chance than people gave to Zexal. Although granted, Zexal doesn't really get exciting until Kite, but even then I find Yuma to be a little bit relatable, because maybe I'll just save that for another video, but I feel like I gave Vrains too much of my energy when I should have expected nothing. So, I mean, I'm still gonna watch it, but on my own time.